For India, the world's second most populous country, plastic waste is a growing problem. That's especially the case during the monsoon season, where it clogs drains and leads to flooding on some city streets.
Right now, somewhere in India, an old plastic bag is being stitched into a sneaker. Dead flowers pulled from a sacred river are being rolled into incense, and a heap of rotting vegetables is quietly powering a kitchen. None of this is a stunt. It's a real industry. One that has grown into something worth more than $13 billion, built almost entirely out of what the rest of us throw away. But the money isn't even the strangest part. The strangest part is the scale of it. How much, how fast, and how many different ways India is turning its garbage into gold.
Recycling of plastic obviously is a wonderful business opportunity. First thing, as you know, plastic cannot be stopped. So either we have to reuse or it will go to landfill.
The waste laboratory. There's a saying here, throw something away anywhere in India, and there's a good chance it eventually ends up in Dharavi. Tucked into the heart of Mumbai, Dharavi is one of the largest recycling hubs on the planet, a place where plastic, metal, paper, and scrap of every kind pour in from across the region until the streets themselves become a sprawling, open-air marketplace for things nobody else wanted. And there is an almost unimaginable amount of it. India generates more waste than nearly any country on Earth, second only to China.
China is now mandating is 0.5% contamination. Is that even possible?
And the government has thrown everything it has at the problem. Nationwide cleanup drives, bans on certain single-use plastics, new collection systems. But with cities swelling and millions more people arriving every year, you simply can't policy your way out of a flood like this. So instead, something stranger started to happen. Under all that pressure, India turned into a kind of living laboratory, a place where environmental crisis, human survival, ancient religious tradition, and cutting-edge recycling technology all slam into each other at once. And the very first thing that laboratory will show you isn't hopeful at all. Mountains that burn. Delhi alone produces around 10,000 tons of waste a day, most of it hauled to 3 giant landfill sites ringing the city. At Palswa, one of the country's largest, thousands of people still make their living climbing those mountains of trash, scavenging for plastic, metal, anything that can be sold. For all of it, they earn maybe 200 to 300 rupees a day, $3 or $4, and the cost they pay is savage. Long hours among toxic waste, used needles, choking dust, and the constant threat of fire. Because these heaps don't just sit there quietly. Methane from rotting waste, trapped heat, plastic, old batteries.
Upcycling helps everyone in the value chain, starting from informal waste picker. They get higher price for the waste, recyclable waste which they pick up.
It all builds until a landfill can erupt into a fire that smolders for days, sometimes weeks, swallowing not just garbage, but the piles of scrap that pickers have spent years stockpiling like a savings account. And hanging over all of it is some of the most polluted air on the planet. A study published in The Lancet Planetary Health linked long-term exposure to air pollution to roughly 1.5 million deaths in India every single year. This is the backdrop, and it's right here, in the shadow of those burning mountains, that a few people started asking a genuinely wild question. What if the trash itself was worth a fortune? Before I show you the answer, do me one quick favor and tap subscribe. Because what India does next with its garbage is the kind of thing you'll want to tell someone about, and stories exactly. This overlooked are the whole reason Terran Works exists. Alright, let's start with your feet. Shoes from trash. What if the plastic bag you threw out yesterday came back today as a pair of sneakers worth more than $100? It sounds absurd, but that's the entire premise behind Thali, an Indian startup building shoes, from roughly 10 plastic bags, 12 plastic bottles, and a pile of discarded rubber waste. Within just a few months of launching, they had sold around 1,500 pairs, and the sustainable fashion world started paying very close attention. Here's how it works. The used bags are washed in nothing but hot water, no chemicals, then hung to dry and stacked 8 to 10 layers deep before being pressed under heat. Picture a giant panini press flattening plastic into cloth, because that's almost exactly what happens, until the layers fuse into a brand new material called Thalitex. that forms most of the shoe's upper. The sole is shredded industrial rubber. Workers rough up the surface, brush on adhesive, hit it with UV light to lock the bond, then run it through heat treatment and stitch the whole thing together, right down to laces spun from recycled plastic. And when you're finally done with the sneakers, you can ship them back for a discount, and the old pair gets recycled, refurbished, or donated to charities and refugee communities. Plastic into shoes, into more shoes. But plastic is the easy villain. The next thing India is rescuing is something you've probably never thought about twice, and it starts with something sweet. Sweet waste. India is the world's second largest sugar producer, more than 25 million tons of it in 2020 alone. And once the cane stalks are crushed for their juice, what's left behind is a damp, stringy mountain of pulp called bagasse. Most mills just burn it, but a brand called Chuck looked at those heaps and saw dinnerware, the raw material for biodegradable bowls, plates, and trays that could quietly shove single-use plastic and foam off the table.
This table and chair are made from what was once Tetra Pak containers. This transformation from discarded juice packs into school furniture is the result of a growing movement called upcycling.
At the peak of harvest, around 100 truckloads of bagasse roll into the factory every day, and it all has to stay damp because dried out fiber cracks like stale bread and refuses to hold a shape. Workers strip out the overly fine strands, wash the rest, and cook it in pressure vessels with an alkaline solution. Think of a giant pressure cooker softening the pulp the way it would soften a pot of dried beans until it is pliable enough to mold. Then high pressure presses crush the water out and stamp it into bowls and plates and trays. The number that pours off the end of that line is staggering, but hold on to it for a minute, because there's a raw material even more unexpected than crushed sugarcane waiting next. And this one is considered too holy to throw away. Sacred remains. In India, flowers are far more than decoration. Every single day, millions of Hindu devotees carry them to temples as offerings to the gods. And once those flowers have been part of a ritual, they're considered sacred, too sacred for most people to dump in the trash. So they go into the rivers instead, including the Ganges, one of the holiest waters in all of Hindu life. Beautiful. Also a quiet disaster. More than 1,000 tons of flowers hit the Ganges every day, carrying pesticides and heavy metals, arsenic, lead, and cadmium, straight into a river already gasping under pollution. Enter a company called Fool. They gather the spent offerings from temples around Kanpur, weigh them, and pick out the threads, fabric, and plastic by hand until only the petals remain, sorted by color, while the buds and stems get turned into compost and sold separately. The petals dry on big tarpaulins in the sun, get ground into a fine powder, then kneaded with water and essential oils into a soft dough. Imagine rolling out cookie dough, except every strip gets wrapped around a thin bamboo stick to become a single incense stick, then dried, dipped in more oil, and dried again. They roll these out at a steady hourly clip that's going to come back in a moment. But petals and plastic at least look like things you might reuse. What India does with a pile of rotting vegetables, and what it manages to power with them, is where this story really starts to bend your brain. Power from rot. At Bowenpalli Market in Hyderabad, about 10 tons of unsold fruit and vegetables get thrown out every single day. Sent to a landfill, all of that would rot, reek, and breathe methane into the sky. Instead, right here, it becomes energy. The kind that lights the street lamps, runs the buildings around the market, and supplies cooking gas for a kitchen, serving around 800 meals a day. The bruised produce is chopped, ground, and blended into a thick slurry, then pumped through underground tanks into anaerobic digesters, sealed oxygen-free chambers, where bacteria do basically what your own gut does to a heavy meal, breaking the waste down and burping out methane. That biogas collects in 4 large gas holders and travels by pipeline to a kitchen 400 to 500 meters away, while the spent sludge left behind becomes fertilizer that the same farmers can buy back to grow their next crop. Trash to dinner, to fertilizer, and around again. And just when you'd think India had run clean out of garbage to reinvent, someone looked up at the smoke itself and decided even that was worth saving. Tiles from smoke. Not all of India's pollution pours out of cars and factories. A huge share of it starts inside ordinary homes, where people still cook over firewood, coal, and dried dung, filling the air with thick smoke, and buried in that smoke is black carbon, microscopic particles that lodge deep in your lungs and help heat the entire planet.
But the fact is, almost 25,000 tons of plastic continues to make its way into dump yards like this one across India every day.
That's the problem. That stopped Indian architect Tejas Sidnal in his tracks. In 2020, he founded Carbon Craft Design and began buying up black carbon from industrial facilities and tire recycling plants, the kind of places that usually sell it off as cheap fuel, only for it to get torched right back into the atmosphere. He hauls that captured carbon to a 35-year-old handcrafted tile workshop, where instead of being baked in a roaring kiln, the tiles are made with cement and never fired at all, more like letting concrete set than baking bread, which slashes the energy needed. The carbon is ground fine, stirred with water into a slurry, and poured into patterned metal molds. The more carbon in the mix, the darker the tile runs, from soft gray to deep black. A hydraulic press crushes each one into its final shape, and they're watered daily until they harden, then polished, rinsed, and packaged, selling for under $2 a piece, right in line with ordinary cement tiles. The workshop's daily output is small but relentless, and I'll hand you that figure in a second, because there is one last kind of trash India has learned to hunt down, and it might be the most disgusting one yet: the filter problem. Every year, the world throws away around 4.5 trillion cigarette filters. Most people picture harmless little plugs of cotton. They're not. They're plastic fibers that barely decompose, soaked in nicotine, formaldehyde, and a whole cocktail of other toxins. In Noida, a city in northern India, one company worked out how to drag that waste into a brand new life. Every month, workers feed millions of filters past metal detectors to pull out anything sharp or metallic. The entire haul gathered by a network of hundreds of collectors who comb the streets, shops, and public squares for discarded butts. Each filter is torn into 3 parts. The leftover tobacco goes off to nearby farms as compost. The paper is shredded, treated with an organic binder, and sun-dried. And because of the nicotine still clinging to it, it can be burned to repel mosquitoes. And the stubborn plastic fiber inside soaks in a disinfectant solution for a full 24 hours until that grimy mass turns soft and white, like cotton pulled from a fresh ball, certified safe, then fluffed, combed, and stuffed into toys, cushions, and keychains. A cigarette butt reborn as a teddy bear. And once you line up everything India is quietly producing from its trash, day after day after day, the numbers stop sounding like recycling and start sounding like an economy. So here is the scale they kept telling you was hard to believe. One factory pressing roughly 1 million biodegradable products out of sugarcane pulp every single day. A small workshop turning out around 200 carbon tiles a day from nothing but soot. Fool rolling out close to 400 incense sticks, an hour from flowers fished out of a holy river. Workers in Noida sorting nearly 7 million cigarette filters a month into something soft enough to stuff a toy. Sneakers, dinnerware, incense, electricity, floor tiles, the filling inside a cushion, all of it pulled straight from the exact stuff the rest of the world pays good money to bury. That is how you build a $13 billion industry out of garbage. And it's why India is starting to look less like a country with a waste problem and more like the place quietly writing the rulebook for what the rest of us do next. But none of it works if the trash never stops coming. In a modern city, almost everything is designed for a few minutes of convenience. The bag, the bottle, the takeout box, and then it climbs into the sky as landfills like Ghazipur in New Delhi and Deonar in Mumbai, where the poorest families, children included, live and scavenge and breathe in the air entire cities have thrown away. Which is the real lesson hiding underneath all this brilliance. Even the cleverest recycling on Earth still can't outrun how much we waste in the first place. And that part doesn't begin in a factory. It begins with sorting a bin at home, buying a little less plastic, choosing the packaging that comes back instead of the one that piles up. So tell me, which one impressed you the most? The sneakers, the incense, the tiles made from smoke, or the rotting vegetables that cook 800 dinners a night? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if this rewired how you see your own trash even a little, hit like, hit subscribe, and stay with Terran Works, because the future keeps getting built in. The places nobody bothers to look,